Can you try it again? Can you try it again?
11:47 p.m. Red Willow Market. The beep cut through the stale air like a siren. Cassara Malone's hands froze on the shopping cart handle. The cashier, a tired woman with a name tag that read Gloria, glanced at the card reader, then back at Cassara with that look, the one that sighed sorry without saying anything at all. Declined, Gloria said quietly. Behind Cassara, someone shifted their weight. She could feel their impatience like heat on her neck. 3 items sat on the belt: a gallon of milk, a carton of eggs, and a small package of ground beef. That was it. Not a luxury in sight, just enough to get her 2 kids through the weekend. Cassara's throat tightened. Can you try it again? Gloria swiped the card. Same beep. Same result. The hum of overhead lights seemed to grow louder. Cassara stared at the groceries, $23.67 worth of food, and felt something crack inside her chest. She'd already done the math 3 times in the cereal aisle. She'd put back the orange juice. She'd skipped the bread. This was supposed to work. I'll take some things off, Cassara whispered. Her hands trembled as she reached for the milk first, then the eggs. The ground beef sat there alone on the belt, the only thing left. Her kids loved tacos. She could stretch 1 pound of meat across 3 days if she added enough rice. But even that might be too much. Ma'am, there's a line, someone muttered behind her. Cassara didn't turn around. She couldn't. If she looked at their faces, she'd cry right there under those buzzing lights, and she'd already cried twice this week. Once when the eviction notice came, once when her son asked why they couldn't go to his friend's birthday party. She wasn't going to cry at a grocery store checkout. Her finger hovered over the ground beef. Then a voice, low, calm, coming from somewhere behind her in line, cut through the tension. Put it all back on. Cassara's hands stopped. She turned halfway, confused. A figure stepped forward, hoodie pulled low, hands in pockets. He didn't look at her, just nodded toward the groceries still sitting in her cart. The milk, the eggs. Put them back on the belt, he said. I've got it. Have you ever stood at a checkout line, praying your card wouldn't decline? Have you ever had to choose between milk for your kids and keeping the lights on? Have you ever felt the weight of strangers' eyes on your back while you decided which necessity you could live without? If you have, you know that shame isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just sits there in your chest, heavy and silent, while you pretend everything's fine. And if you haven't, stick with me. Because in the next 60 seconds, a stranger in a hoodie is going to change this broken mother's life and an entire town without even meaning to. Welcome back to Mr. Duskmore's Stories, where we explore the moments that reveal who we really are when no one's watching. I'm your host, Mr. Duskmore, and tonight's story is about money, power, and what happens when those 2 forces collide in the most ordinary places. Before we go any further, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button if you love stories that challenge the way we see the world, and tap the like button to help this reach someone who needs to hear it. Trust me, there's a twist coming that'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about kindness, identity, and what it really costs to help someone. Now, back to that stranger. Because here's what Cassara didn't know yet. The man offering to pay for her groceries wasn't just some random Good Samaritan. He was someone who had every reason to stay invisible. Someone whose name, if spoken aloud in that store, would have stopped every conversation cold. And what's about to happen next? It's going to force him to make a choice between staying hidden or stepping into the light and risking everything. Stay with me to the end to see how this moment at a grocery store forces a billionaire to risk everything, and how one small act of kindness turns into a chance to rebuild an entire town. Cassara had built that cart like an architect drafting blueprints. 30 minutes earlier, she'd stood in the dairy section with her phone calculator open, fingers moving across the cracked screen. Milk, $4.29. Eggs, $3.19. Ground beef, $6.49. Running total, $13.97. She had $23.50 in her account. The water bill was $31. The late notice said they'd shut it off Monday. She could make this work. She had to. In the cereal aisle, her daughter Mira's favorite marshmallow cereal had been on the shelf, a bright pink box with a cartoon unicorn. $5.99. Mira had asked for it last week, with those wide eyes that always made Kasara's heart ache. Kasara had picked it up, held it for 10 seconds, then set it back on the shelf. Necessities only. Survival only. She'd moved through the store like a ghost, avoiding eye contact with other shoppers. The lights made everything look washed out, including her reflection in the freezer glass. When had she started looking this tired? At the clearance rack near the registers, she'd found a 3-pack of socks marked down to $4. Tavin had been wearing the same 2 pairs all week, rotating them because the others had holes. She'd stared at those socks for a full minute, guilt crawling up her spine. $4. That was $4 she didn't have. She put them in the cart anyway. Her son deserved socks that didn't have holes. That shouldn't be a luxury. That shouldn't require a moral calculation. But here she was, in a grocery store at nearly midnight, feeling like a criminal for buying her 8-year-old boy socks. The math had been tight, but it worked. $23.67 total. She had $23.50. But then she remembered the bank had been threatening an overdraft fee from last week. If they'd already processed it, she'd be short. She checked her phone one more time. Balance, $23.50. The fee hadn't hit yet. Maybe she had until Monday. She'd done the best she could. That's what she kept telling herself as she walked to the register. The best she could. It had to be enough. Except her card had other plans. Gloria swiped the card a second time. Same beep, same red X on the screen. Kasara's stomach dropped. She'd checked the balance twice before leaving the apartment. It was there. It had to be there. Do you have another form of payment? Gloria asked, her voice careful, practiced. This wasn't her first declined card tonight. No, I don't understand. Kasara's voice cracked. Can you check the amount? Maybe. She stopped. Behind her, someone sighed loudly. Another person muttered something she couldn't quite hear. The line was growing. She could feel it pressing against her back like a physical weight. Gloria tilted the card reader screen toward her. There it was, insufficient funds. But that was impossible, unless the fee had been processed after all. She pulled out her phone while shaking hands and checked her banking app. Balance, negative $11.50. The overdraft fee, $35, deducted 2 hours ago, right after she'd left the apartment. All the air went out of Kasara's lungs. She stared at the groceries on the belt. Milk, eggs, beef, socks. $23 worth of basics that might as well have been champagne and caviar. Her hands started to shake. I need to take some things off, she said again, quieter this time. She reached for the milk first, cold against her palm. Mira loved cereal in the mornings, but they could use water. Kids drank water, right? Then, the eggs. Tavin liked scrambled eggs, but they still had half a box of pasta at home. They'd survive. Her hand hovered over the ground beef. If she kept just this one thing, she could make it stretch. Tacos Monday, spaghetti sauce Tuesday, maybe fried rice Wednesday if she added enough. Ma'am, seriously? The man behind her snapped. Some of us have places to be. Kasara's vision blurred. Don't cry. Don't cry here. Not in front of strangers. Not under these lights with everyone watching. Her finger touched the package of beef. And then that voice came again, steady and low. Put it all back on. Kasara turned. The man in the hoodie stood 3 feet behind her. Dark grey fabric, hood pulled forward just enough to shadow most of his face. Hands still in his pockets. He wasn't tall, maybe 5'10", but something about the way he stood made him seem solid, present. I'm sorry. Kasara whispered. The milk, the eggs. He nodded toward the items still sitting in her cart. Put them back on the belt. I'll cover it. She blinked. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. His voice was calm, Not pitying, not condescending, just certain. But I'm going to... Kasara's throat closed up. She shook her head, shame burning in her chest. I can't let you do that. I just need to... If you were my mother, he interrupted gently, I'd want someone to do this for her. That stopped her. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she and Gloria could hear. No strings, no favors. You don't owe me anything. Just let me help. Kasara stared at him. She couldn't see his eyes clearly under the hood, but his tone didn't waver. There was no performance in it, no self-congratulation. He said it like he meant it. Her hands trembled as she placed the milk back on the belt. Then the eggs. Then the beef. The man turned to Gloria. Add whatever else she needs. Rice. Another gallon of milk. Bread. Toilet paper if you've got it up here. Gloria hesitated, glancing between them. Go ahead, he said. Kasara opened her mouth to protest, but he was already walking toward the front displays, scanning the shelves. He returned with his arms full, a 10-pound bag of rice, another gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, a 12-pack of toilet paper, a jar of peanut butter, and a box of pasta. He set them all on the belt without a word. The total climbed. $23.67 became $54.13. Then $68.90. Kasara felt dizzy. That's too much. I can't. You're not, he said simply. I am. Gloria rang up the last item, $72.34. The man pulled a black card from his pocket, matte finish, no logos, the kind of card Kasara had only seen in movies, and tapped it against the reader. One soft beep. Approved, just like that. Kasara pushed her cart toward her car in a daze. The night air bit at her skin, cold enough to sting. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few scattered vehicles under yellow lights that buzzed like dying insects. Her sedan sat in the far corner, dented front bumper held on with duct tape. She was loading the last bag into her trunk when she heard footsteps behind her. The man in the hoodie. She turned, clutching her keys. I don't know how to thank you. He shrugged, hands back in his pockets. You don't need to. I do, though. Her voice cracked. You have no idea what this means. My kids, they're going to eat this week because of you. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I remember being hungry. Kasara blinked. What? When I was a kid. He glanced toward the store, his face still mostly hidden. I remember what it felt like. Going to bed with my stomach hurting because we didn't have food. Watching my mom cry because she couldn't fix it. He looked back at her. I remember. Something in his tone made her believe him. This wasn't just talk. This was a memory. How did you... She trailed off, not sure how to ask. Get out of it. He gave a small, tired smile. Luck, hard work, a lot of both. He paused. And people who helped when they didn't have to. Kasara wiped at her eyes. I don't even know your name. He hesitated. For a second, she thought he wouldn't tell her. Then he said, Kaylin. Kaylin Morvant. She nodded. I'm Kasara. Kasara Malone. They stood there in the cold, two strangers who'd just shared something neither of them had words for. Well, Kaylin Morvant, Kasara said softly, I'm going to remember you, and I'm going to pray that someone does something good for you the way you just did for me. Kaylin's smile faded. You don't have to do that. I know, she said, but I'm going to. He nodded once, then turned and walked toward the far end of the lot. Kasara watched him go. That's when she saw the car, sleek, black, low to the ground. It sat under a lamppost like a panther crouched in shadow. Even from 50 feet away, Kasara could tell it cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Kaylin Morvant pulled his hood down as he approached it, and for the first time, she saw his face clearly. Young, maybe early 30s, sharp jawline, tired eyes. He slid into the driver's seat without looking back. The engine purred to life, smooth, expensive, nothing like the clatter of her sedan, and he pulled out of the lot in silence. Kasara stood there, groceries loaded, wind biting at her cheeks, staring at the empty space where the car had been. Who was he? A man in a hoodie who remembered hunger. A man with a credit card that didn't blink at $72. A man who drove a car that probably cost 6 figures, but talked to her like they were equals. None of it made sense. But standing there in that freezing parking lot, Cassara Malone closed her eyes and prayed. She prayed for Kaylen Morvant, for whoever he was, for wherever he came from. She prayed that the world would be kind to him the way he'd just been kind to her. And she had no idea, absolutely no idea, that the man she was praying for was the same man half the country wanted to destroy. Let me pause here for a second, because this is the part of the story where we need to talk about what kindness actually costs. Kaylen Morvant spent $72 that night. For him, that was nothing. Pocket change, the equivalent of you or me buying a coffee. But for Cassara Malone, it was everything. It was milk for her daughter, eggs for her son, socks without holes. It was the difference between shame and relief, between hunger and hope. Here's the thing about generosity, it's not measured by the size of the gift. It's measured by the size of the need. Kaylen didn't know Cassara's story when he stepped up to that register. He didn't know about the eviction notice or the overdraft fees or the nights she cried after her kids went to bed. He just saw someone struggling, and he helped. No cameras, no applause, no social media post about what a good person he was. Just one human being, seeing another human being and deciding to act. And that's the moment that set everything else in motion. Because kindness doesn't stay small. It ripples. It spreads. Sometimes it even changes the people who witness it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, Cassara is driving home with groceries she didn't think she'd have. And Kaylen is driving back to a life he's been trying to escape. Neither of them knows it yet, but this story is just beginning. 8:47 a.m. Morvant Dynamics headquarters, Chicago. The next morning, the conference room sat on the 32nd floor, wrapped in floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooked the city. The table was polished black marble. The chairs were Italian leather. Everything gleamed. At the head of the table sat Kaylen Morvant. Same man, different world. The hoodie was gone. In its place, a charcoal suit tailored to perfection. Crisp white shirt, no tie. His hair was combed back. His posture was controlled. He looked every inch the billionaire CEO the world expected him to be. But his eyes, those same tired eyes from the parking lot, hadn't changed. Around the table sat 8 executives, each one holding tablets and quarterly reports. Coffee cups sat in front of them, steam rising in lazy curls. No one spoke. They were waiting. Kaylen glanced at the agenda projected on the wall behind him. 4th quarter strategic review, Red Willow manufacturing plant. He felt something tighten in his chest. Let's get started, he said quietly. Lyric Dane leaned forward immediately. Mid-50s, silver hair, suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had the look of a man who'd never missed a meal or a profit margin. The Red Willow plant is bleeding money, Lyric said, voice clipped and efficient. We've been over this for 6 months. Production is down 18%. Operating costs are up 12%. We're losing $4.2 million annually on a facility that's functionally obsolete. He tapped his tablet, and a graph appeared on the screen. Red lines slashing downward. The recommendation is simple, Lyric continued. Close it. Liquidate the equipment. Repurpose the real estate. We cut losses, protect shareholder value, and redirect resources to facilities that actually generate returns. Kaylen said nothing. Across the table, Odelia Reese set her coffee down slowly. Early 40s, sharp features, dark blazer over a grey blouse. She ran the Morvant Foundation, the arm of the company that actually cared about people instead of just profit. And the workers? Odelia asked, her tone calm but pointed. Lyric didn't even blink. Severance packages, standard protocol. We're not obligated beyond that. Standard protocol, Odelia repeated. 347 people lose their jobs, and we hand them 2 weeks' pay per year of service and call it generous. It's more than most companies offer, Lerich shot back. It's not enough to survive on. Lerich's jaw tightened. This isn't a charity, Odelia. It's a business. It's both, she said. Or it's supposed to be. Kaelin's fingers drummed once against the table. Everyone stopped talking. Odelia turned toward Kaelin. Red Willow isn't just a plant. It's the economic backbone of the entire town. If we close it, we're not just cutting a line item. We're gutting a community. She pulled up her own report. Charts, demographic breakdowns, poverty rates. Red Willow has a population of 4,200 people, she said. The plant employs 347 of them directly. Another 200 jobs depend on it indirectly: suppliers, transport, local retail. If we shut it down, we're looking at a 25% unemployment rate overnight. Lerich waved a hand dismissively. They'll find work elsewhere. Where? Odelia's voice sharpened. The next town over is 40 miles away. Most of these workers don't have reliable transportation. Red Willow has no public transit. The median household income is already $31,000 a year. You close this plant, and half the town won't be able to afford rent. She swiped to another slide. Photos of Red Willow's main street. Faded storefronts. Cracked sidewalks. A boarded-up diner. Food insecurity is already at 18%, Odelia continued. The school district reports that 62% of students qualify for free or reduced lunch. The local food bank is operating at capacity. If we take away 300 jobs, we're not just hurting workers, we're starving families. Kaelin stared at the photos on the screen. He knew that main street. He'd driven through it last night after leaving the grocery store, trying to clear his head. He'd seen the same boarded-up diner, the same cracked sidewalks, and he'd met one of those families, Cassara Malone, hands shaking at the register, choosing between milk and eggs. Lerich scoffed. With all due respect, Odelia, we're not responsible for fixing an entire town's economic problems. Red Willow's decline started long before we acquired that plant 2 years ago. And we have a choice, Odelia said, whether to make it worse or try to make it better. We have a fiduciary responsibility, Lerich countered, to our shareholders, not to a dying town that can't sustain itself. Odelia's eyes flashed. Our shareholders include pension funds for teachers and firefighters. You want to tell them we prioritized quarterly returns over keeping families fed? The room went silent. Kaelin's gaze stayed fixed on the screen, on the photos of Red Willow, on the numbers that represented real people with real lives. People like Cassara, people like he used to be. Kaelin closed his eyes for just a second. 15 years ago, different towns, same story. He was 17, sitting at a kitchen table with peeling linoleum floors and a fridge covered in past due notices. His mother across from him, hands folded, face hollow. They're closing the plant, she'd said quietly. Kaelin had stared at her. What does that mean? It means I don't have a job anymore. The plant had been the only employer in their town. His mother had worked third shift for 12 years, assembly line, minimum wage, no benefits. It destroyed her back and kept them barely afloat. And then, it was gone. Within 6 months, they'd lost the apartment. Within a year, half the town looked like a ghost settlement. Boarded windows, empty streets, families packing up and leaving in the middle of the night to avoid eviction notices. Kaelin remembered standing in a grocery store checkout line with his mother, watching her hands shake as she tried to decide what to put back. He remembered the look on her face, shame mixed with exhaustion mixed with defeat. He remembered being hungry, and he remembered the people in suits who made the decision to close that plant. People who never saw his mother's face. People who never stood in a checkout line counting pennies. People who lived in a different world and made choices that destroyed him. He'd sworn back then that if he ever had power, he'd be different. He'd remember. Kaelin opened his eyes. Lerich was still talking, something about cost-benefit analysis and market corrections. Kaelin didn't hear most of it. He raised a hand. Lerich stopped mid-sentence. I'm not making this decision today, Kaelin said. Lerich blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "I'm not making this decision today." Kaylin's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I want a full assessment, not just financials. I want projections on what it would cost to upgrade the plant instead of closing it. New equipment, process improvements, automation where it makes sense, but not at the expense of the workforce." Leric's face tightened. "That's going to take months, and cost." "I don't care how long it takes," Kaylin interrupted. "And I want community voices included. I want to hear from the workers, from town leadership, from families who depend on that plant." Odelia's eyebrows lifted slightly. She didn't smile, but something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe. Leric leaned back in his chair, clearly frustrated. "Kaylin, with all due respect, this is a waste of resources. The numbers don't lie. Red Willow is a sinking ship. Then maybe we figure out how to patch the hull instead of abandoning everyone on board," Kaylin said quietly. The room went still. Leric opened his mouth, then closed it. He wasn't used to being overruled. Kaylin stood. "I want the assessment on my desk in 4 weeks. Full scope, every option. We're not closing anything until I see it." He walked out of the boardroom without waiting for a response. Behind him, the executives sat in stunned silence. Odelia gathered her tablet and followed Kaylin into the hallway. She caught up to him near the elevators. "That was brave," she said quietly. Kaylin didn't look at her. "It was necessary. Leric's not going to let this go." "I know." Odelia studied him. "What changed?" 6 months ago, you were ready to sign off on the closure. Now you're asking for community input and full assessments. What happened?" Kaylin pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open. "I remembered something," he said. "What?" He stepped inside, turning to face her. "What it feels like to be on the other side of decisions like this." The doors closed. "Here's the thing about power. It has a way of making you forget where you came from. It insulates you, puts you in rooms with marble tables and Italian leather chairs, surrounds you with people who talk about human lives like they're line items on a spreadsheet, and if you're not careful, you start to believe that's all they are." Kaylin Morvant had spent 15 years clawing his way out of poverty. He'd built an empire from nothing. He'd become the kind of person who could walk into any room and command it. But somewhere along the way, he'd started to forget the kid who went to bed hungry, the teenager who watched his mother cry over bills she couldn't pay, the young man who swore he'd be different if he ever had the chance, until he stood in a grocery store at midnight and saw a woman's hands shake over a carton of eggs. And just like that, the kid he used to be woke up. That's the moment this story hinges on, not the boardroom, not the quarterly reports, not the profit margins or shareholder value. It's the moment a powerful man remembered what it felt like to be powerless. Because that memory, that one flicker of empathy, was about to become the most dangerous thing Kaylin Morvant had ever carried. It wasn't just about one plant anymore. It wasn't just about Red Willow or 300 jobs or a struggling town. It was about whether he was going to repeat the cycle that almost destroyed him, or whether he was going to break it. And breaking cycles, that's never easy. It's costly. It's risky. It makes enemies. But sometimes, it's the only choice worth making. Kaylin Morvant was about to find out just how much that choice would cost him, and so was the town of Red Willow. Saturday morning. 2 weeks later, Red Willow Community Center. The building sat on the edge of town, a squat brick structure with peeling paint and a gravel parking lot full of potholes. Inside, the main gymnasium had been converted into a distribution hub, folding tables lined up in rows, cardboard boxes stacked against the walls, volunteers in donated aprons moving between stations. This was where Red Willow came when the month lasted longer than the paycheck. Cassara Malone stood behind one of the tables, sorting canned vegetables into family-sized portions. Green beans, corn, diced tomatoes. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her mind was elsewhere. It had been 2 weeks since the grocery store. 2 weeks later, a stranger named Kaylin Morvant had paid for her food and disappeared into the night. She still thought about him, prayed for him, like she'd promised. I wondered who he really was, but right now, She has work to do. A woman approached the table, mid-30s, tired eyes, a toddler balanced on her hip. Cassara recognized her from the school pickup line. "Hi," the woman said quietly, almost apologetically. "Hey." Cassara smiled. "How many in your household?" "4. Me, my husband, and 2 kids." Cassara nodded and started filling a box. Pasta, rice, canned chicken, peanut butter. The basics. The woman hesitated, then said, "Is there any chance? Do you have any cake mix?" Cassara paused. "Cake mix?" The woman's cheeks flushed. "It's stupid." "I know. It's just, my daughter's birthday is Monday, and I promised her a cake, and I thought maybe—" She trailed off, embarrassed. Cassara's chest tightened. She knew that look. The shame of asking for something that wasn't strictly necessary. The guilt of wanting to give your child a normal childhood when you could barely afford survival. "It's not stupid," Cassara said softly. She turned and scanned the shelves behind her. Most of the donated items were staples, nothing fancy, nothing extra. But tucked in the back, behind a row of instant oatmeal, she spotted a single box of yellow cake mix. She grabbed it and placed it in the woman's box. "Here. And hold on." She ducked into the storage closet and emerged with a container of chocolate frosting someone had donated last week. "There," Cassara said, adding it to the box. "Now she'll have a real birthday." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You have no idea." "I do," Cassara said. "Trust me, I do." The woman nodded, clutching the box like it held gold, and walked away. Cassara took a breath and turned back to the line. That's when she saw him. He stood near the entrance, hands in the pockets of a plain navy jacket, jeans worn enough to blend in. No hood this time, just a quiet man in his early 30s, scanning the room like he wasn't sure he belonged. Cassara's breath caught. Kalen Morvant. What was he doing here? He caught her eye across the gym and gave a small nod, polite, nothing more. Then he walked over to Bruna Kavitz, the center's coordinator, and said something too quiet for Cassara to hear. Bruna pointed toward the back tables. Kalen nodded, thanked her, and headed in that direction. Cassara watched, confused, as he picked up an apron from the volunteer station and tied it around his waist. Then he started bagging potatoes. No announcement, no fanfare, just work. One of the other volunteers, Gary, a retired mechanic who'd been helping at the center for years, walked over and handed Kalen a stack of empty bags. "First time?" Gary asked. "Yeah," Kalen said. "You'll get the hang of it. £5 per bag. Try to keep them even." Kalen nodded and got to work. Cassara stared. This was the same man who'd spent $72 on her groceries without blinking. The same man who drove a car that cost more than her annual salary. And now he was bagging potatoes in a community center gym. What was he doing here? Kalen worked quietly, keeping his head down. Around him, the volunteers and locals talked freely. They didn't know who he was. To them, he was just another pair of hands. "Have you heard the latest about the plant?" A woman at the next table said, her voice low but tense. "What now?" Gary asked. "Rumor is Morvant Dynamics is shutting it down, closing it for good." Gary's face darkened. "Where'd you hear that?" "My cousin works in HR. She said they've been reviewing the numbers for months. It's just a matter of time." A younger man, maybe mid-20s, wearing a faded plant logo on his jacket, shook his head. "If they close that plant, this town's done. My dad's been there 21 years. What's he supposed to do? Start over at 54? They don't care," the woman said bitterly. "We're just numbers on a spreadsheet to them." Kalen's hand stilled for a second, then kept moving. Another volunteer, an older woman with graying hair, spoke up. "If they do close it, what do people even need? There's no jobs here, no retraining programs. Half the folks at that plant never finished high school. They'd need severance," Gary said. "Real severance. Not 2 weeks' pay and a handshake, and help finding new work. Relocation assistance if they got to leave town. Good luck with that," the younger man muttered. Companies like Morvant don't care about relocation. They care about profit. Kaelin said nothing, just kept bagging potatoes, listening to every word. Bruna Kavitz walked past the table, clipboard in hand, doing her rounds. She glanced at Kaelin, then stopped. Her eyes narrowed. She tilted her head, studying him. Then her face went pale. "Wait," she said slowly. You're that Morvant, aren't you?" The gym didn't go silent all at once. It was more like a wave, one conversation stopping, then another, until the only sound was the hum of the overhead lights. Kaelin straightened. He met Bruna's gaze and nodded. "Yes." Bruna took a step back. "You're the CEO of Morvant Dynamics." "I am." Every head in the room turned toward him. Gary's face hardened. The younger man in the plant jacket stood up, fists clenched. The woman who'd been talking about rumors crossed her arms. "You've got some nerve showing up here," Gary said, his voice cold. Kaelin didn't flinch. "I came to help." "Help?" The younger man laughed bitterly. "You mean help us pack our bags when you shut down the plant?" "I'm not here to shut anything down." "Then what are you here for?" the woman demanded. "To feel better about yourself, to see what it's like to pretend you're one of us before you destroy our lives." Murmurs of agreement swept through the room. Kasara's heart pounded. She stared at Kaelin, her mind racing. This was the man who'd bought her groceries, the man who'd said he remembered being hungry. And he was also the CEO of the company that held Red Willow's future in his hands. The room was on the edge of boiling over. Gary stepped closer to Kaelin, jaw tight. "Answer the question. Are you shutting us down or not?" Kaelin opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Kasara moved. She stepped out from behind her table and raised her voice. "Let him speak." The room turned toward her. "Kasara," Gary started. "No," she said firmly. "Let him speak. We want answers, right? Then let's actually hear what he has to say before we run him out." Gary looked at her like she'd lost her mind. The younger man scoffed, but no one interrupted. Kasara turned to Kaelin. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were sharp. "You came here for a reason, so talk." Kaelin met her gaze. There was something in his expression, gratitude maybe, or recognition. He took a breath and addressed the room. "I'm not here to make excuses," he said, "and I'm not here to make promises I can't keep. But I am here to tell you that I asked my board to delay the closure decision." Silence. "I requested a full assessment," Kaelin continued. "Not just financially. I want to know what it would take to upgrade the plant instead of closing it. I want to hear from the people who work there, from the families who depend on it, from this town." "Why?" the younger man asked. "Why now? You've owned that plant for 2 years. Why do you suddenly care?" Kaelin hesitated. Then he said, "Because I forgot what it felt like to be on the other side of decisions like this. And I got reminded." He didn't elaborate, didn't explain. But Kasara understood. She saw it in his eyes. The memory of the grocery store, the card declined. He was talking about her. The room stayed quiet. Gary's arms were still crossed, but his posture had shifted slightly. Less hostile, more cautious. "What does delay mean?" Bruna asked. "Are you buying time, or are you actually trying to save it?" "I'm trying to find a way to make it work," Kaelin said. "But I can't do that without knowing what this community needs. So I'm asking, what would you need if the plant had to change? What would make this transition bearable if we can't avoid it?" "Jobs," Gary said bluntly. "We need jobs, not handouts, no pity. Jobs. Training programs," the older woman added. "Something that actually leads somewhere. Not just a certificate that doesn't mean anything. Severance that reflects what people put in," the younger man said. "My dad gave 21 years to that place. He deserves more than 2 weeks' pay." Kaelin pulled out his phone and started taking notes. "Keep going." They did. For the next 10 minutes, people spoke up. Some are angry, some are scared, some desperate. But all of them are honest. And Kaelin listened. When the room finally quieted, he looked up. "I can't promise to save every job. I can't promise the plant won't change. But I can promise you this. You will have a voice. You will be seen. And whatever decision gets made, it won't be made without you. It wasn't everything they wanted to hear, but it was something. Gary exhaled slowly. We'll hold you to that. Good, Kalen said. You should. Over the next 3 weeks, something shifted in Red Willow. Kalen didn't just send consultants or conduct surveys from a distance. He showed up. He sat in folding chairs in high school gymnasiums and church basements, listening to workers talk about pride and fear in equal measure. A machine operator named Derek Webb stood up in one session, voice shaking. I don't want pity. I want respect. I've given 2 decades to that plant. My father worked there before me. We built things that mattered. We weren't just numbers on a line. Kalen wrote it down, every word. Linda, the forklift operator, challenged him directly. If you have to close the plant, fine. But don't pretend you gave us a voice if you're just going to do what you planned anyway. We've seen that before. That's not what this is, Adelia said gently from beside Kalen. Then prove it, Linda said. And slowly, he did. Adelia noticed something during those sessions. Cassara Malone didn't just attend. She asked the questions no one else would. She cut through corporate language and demanded clarity. She spoke for single parents, for service workers, for people one paycheck from disaster. After the 4th session, Adelia pulled her aside. I want to offer you a position, Adelia said, on a community advisory board. Paid. $25 an hour, 10 hours a week to start. Cassara stared. Why me? Because you're honest. Because you understand what's actually at stake. And because you're not afraid to challenge him. Cassara hesitated. I don't want to be a token. You won't be, Adelia said. We need people who will tell us the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Cassara thought about her kids, about rent, about the breathing room that kind of money could provide. I'm doing this for my kids, she said finally. And for this town. Not to make him look good. Good, Adelia said. Then we're on the same page. The work began. Cassara joined site visits and planning meetings. And she didn't hold back. When engineers proposed a new playground near the plant, Cassara cut them off. A playground doesn't replace a paycheck. You want to show you care about families? Pay people enough so they don't have to choose between rent and groceries. Kalen set his pen down. She's right. Scrap the playground. Reallocate that budget to workforce support. The engineers blinked, stunned. Later, during a discussion about automation, Cassara challenged the numbers. So we're upgrading the plant by cutting 12 jobs? That's not solving the problem. That's just making it quieter. Kalen turned to his team. What's option 2? Slowly, she watched him tie his own compensation to community outcomes. If the plant closed without meeting specific benchmarks for severance, retraining, and job placement, he'd cut his salary by 30%. Lyric called it absurd. Kalen called it accountability. And somewhere in those long meetings and honest arguments, something else began to grow. One evening, Cassara invited Kalen to her apartment for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just spaghetti and garlic bread. Mira showed him her drawings. Tavin asked if he really used to be poor. Yeah, Kalen said quietly. I did. Like, no food poor. Sometimes. Kalen admitted that spaghetti used to be a holiday meal in his house. Cassara understood. She'd lived that life. I was still living it, in many ways. But sitting there at her small table, something felt different. Like, maybe things could actually change. That night, alone in his home office, Kalen opened a file he'd been avoiding for years. Isolde, Incident Report 2019. A factory floor. Twisted metal. A young woman named Isolde Crane, 28 years old, killed when safety equipment failed. Equipment his company had known was faulty. Equipment they'd delayed fixing because of cost concerns. The settlement had been quiet. The family had signed agreements. The public never knew the full story. And Kalen had spent 4 years building schools and funding programs, telling himself he was making up for it. But staring at her photo, he knew the truth. No amount of charity could undo what he'd hidden. His hands shook as he closed the laptop. Generosity wasn't enough, not anymore. He had to tell the truth. Tuesday evening. Community center, small office. The office was barely bigger than a closet. Metal desk, 2 folding chairs, a filing cabinet with a broken drawer. Kasara sat across from Kalen, watching him struggle to find words. "I need to tell you something," he said finally. "And after I do, you might not want anything to do with me." Kasara's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" He took a breath. 4 years ago, we acquired a manufacturing division in Pennsylvania. There was equipment on site, older machinery, some of it flagged for safety upgrades. Kasara said nothing, just listened. "We knew about the issues," Kalen continued. "My team flagged them. But the fixes were expensive. We were delayed." He looked up at her. 2 months later, a woman named Isolde Crane was killed when one of those machines failed. Kasara's breath caught. She was 28. She had a daughter. And she died because we chose cost savings over safety. The room felt smaller. We settled with her family quietly. No public admission of fault. And I've spent 4 years trying to make up for it with philanthropy. His voice cracked. But none of it balances the scale. I let someone die to protect my company. Kasara stared at him, heart pounding. "I'm going to reopen the case," Kalen said. "Publicly. Admit what we did. Compensate her family properly. Reform our safety protocols completely. That'll destroy you," Kasara whispered. "I know. You could lose everything. I know. And it could destabilize Red Willow in the short term. Make things worse before they get better." He leaned forward. "That's why I'm telling you now. Because you deserve to know what's coming. And you deserve the chance to walk away." Kasara stood abruptly and turned her back to him. She just started to believe things could get better. She had income, stability, hope. And now he was about to blow it all up. "You're asking me to risk everything," she said quietly. "I'm not asking you to do anything," Kalen said. "I'm just telling you what I'm going to do." She closed her eyes, thought about Mira and Tavin, about the lessons she was trying to teach them. Tell the truth, even when it's hard. She turned to face him. "If you do this, you do it all the way. No half-truths, no spin. You tell the whole story." Kalen nodded. "And you go to her family first, face to face, not through lawyers." "I will." "And you build systems where you're not the only conscience in the room. Independent oversight. Real power for the community board." "I will." Kasara took a breath. "I'm not walking away, but I'm not your savior either. We do this together. But you own your choices." Relief flooded Kalen's face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "We don't know what's coming." They sat back down, facing each other in the tiny office. "When?" Kasara asked. "I'm meeting with Isolde's family this weekend. If they'll hear me out, I'll hold a press conference the following week." Kasara's stomach dropped. "That's fast." "It has to be. The longer I wait, the more I'll talk myself out of it. What do you need from me? Just be honest. If I'm doing this wrong, tell me. I need someone who won't let me hide." Kasara nodded. "I can do that." They sat in silence, the weight of what they were about to do settling over them. "I'm scared," Kalen said quietly. "Good," Kasara said. "You should be—" He reached across the desk. Kasara hesitated, then took his hand. Not romantic, just human. 2 people afraid of the same thing, choosing to face it together. "Whatever happens," Kalen said, "thank you." Kasara squeezed his hand. "Ask me again after the press conference." The following Monday. Press conference. The room was packed with reporters and cameras. Kalen stood at the podium, no notes, just the truth he'd carried for 4 years. 4 years ago, a woman named Isolde Crane was killed in an accident at a facility my company had acquired. She was 28. She had a daughter. And she died because we chose cost savings over safety. The room erupted in murmurs. We knew about the equipment failures. We had the resources to fix them. But we were delayed. After her death, we settled quietly. We buried the details. And I've spent 4 years trying to balance that harm with philanthropy." He paused. "But generosity doesn't erase harm. It doesn't bring back the dead. I'm here today to admit that publicly, to offer full reparations to her family and to commit to structural reforms so profit is never again prioritized over people." Within hours, the fallout began. Stock prices dropped 12%. Shareholders flooded the hotlines. Board members demanded emergency meetings. Lyric stormed into Kalen's office, furious. "You just tanked our stock." "We were negligent," Kalen said calmly. "This is corporate suicide. Then I'll go down with the ship." 3 investors pulled funding. 2 board members resigned. Lawsuits were filed. But Kalen didn't run. That Saturday, he sat in a modest living room in Pennsylvania, across from Helen and David Crane, Isolde's parents. He told them everything. The delays, the cost discussions, the settlement, the cover-up. He didn't defend himself, just laid it bare. "You let my daughter die to save money," Helen said, tears streaming. "Yes," Kalen said. "I did." "Sorry doesn't bring her back," David said, voice shaking. "No, it doesn't." Helen wiped her eyes. "We want her story told. We want systems in place so no other mother buries her daughter because someone chose profit over safety." "I'll make that happen," Kalen said. "And we want her daughter taken care of. Education, housing, whatever she needs, done. And we want you to remember her, not as a mistake, as a person." Kalen's vision blurred. "I will. I promise." They didn't forgive him, but they let him leave knowing the truth was finally out. Over the next 2 months, Morvant dynamics transformed. Executive bonuses were tied to worker safety, job retention, environmental compliance, and community feedback. If standards weren't met, executives didn't get paid. The Red Willow plant was upgraded instead of closed. New equipment, overhauled safety protocols, independent quarterly inspections. A training center was built on-site, open to anyone in town looking to learn new skills. Some roles changed. A handful of positions were automated, but those workers were retrained and reassigned. None were simply let go. And every major decision went through the Community Advisory Board first. It wasn't perfect. There were still fights, still compromises, but it was honest and accountable. 3 months after the press conference, Kalen stood on the company rooftop after a close shareholder vote. His reforms had barely passed, 51% in favor. Kasara found him there. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. "I almost lost everything today." "But you didn't." They stood in silence. Then Kalen said, "I'm falling for you." Kasara's breath caught. "I know the timing's terrible," he continued, "but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. I'm falling for you too," she admitted. "But I'm scared of losing myself, scared of my kids getting hurt, scared you'll slip back into hiding. I'm scared of that too." "Then we need rules," Kasara said firmly. "No fairy tale rescue. I keep my apartment, my job, my independence. We're honest about everything. And if I see you slipping, I call you out. Deal." She stepped closer. "This is going to be complicated, I know. And messy, I know. And we might fail." "Probably," Kalen said. "But I'd rather try than never try at all." Kasara looked at him and leaned in. The kiss was gentle, tentative, real. 2 flawed people choosing to grow together. 6 months later, they stood in Red Willow Market on a Saturday morning. Mira grabbed the pink unicorn cereal she'd wanted months ago. At the register, the total came to $48. Kasara swiped her card. Approved. No panic. Just normal. Behind them, a woman fumbled with her wallet. Her card declined. Kasara and Kalen exchanged a look. Kasara turned to the cashier. "Add her groceries to mine." The woman looked up, startled. "I can't." "No strings," Kalen said gently. "Just pass it on someday when you can." The woman nodded, unable to speak. As they walked to the car, Mira asked, "Why'd you do that?" Kasara knelt down. "Because someone did it for us once. and it mattered. Are we going to do it again? Whenever we can, Kasara said. Tavin spoke up. Does that make us rich? Kalen smiled. No, buddy. It makes you kind. That's better. Full circle. Let's talk about what really happened here. This story started with a card decline. A woman's hands shaking over eggs. A stranger said 4 words. Put it all back on. That moment set off a chain reaction. A billionaire remembered hunger. A single mom found her voice. A town got a fighting chance. And a woman who died 4 years ago finally got her story told. All because one man chose to see another person's struggle and act. But this isn't about a billionaire saving the day. It's about what happens when people stop hiding. When they choose truth over comfort, partnership over rescue, accountability over applause. Here are the lessons. First, small kindness causes big ripples. Kalen spent $72. For him, nothing. For Kasara, everything. That one act gave her breathing room to volunteer, which put her in the room when he showed up, which led to her joining the board, which pushed him to reopen Isolde's case, which forced company reform. $72 changed a town. You can't drop that kind of money on strangers, but you can hold a door, smile at someone struggling, leave a bigger tip, check on a neighbor, offer to babysit. Kindness doesn't have to be expensive, just intentional. Second, real love is partnership, not rescue. Kasara didn't get saved. She got a partner who listened and made space for her voice. And she did the same for him, challenged him, held him accountable, refused to let him hide. That's what real partnership looks like. 2 people choosing to grow together, not one person fixing the other. Third, integrity costs something, but hiding costs more. Kalen could have kept Isolde's case buried. He'd gotten away with it for years. But he came forward anyway. It cost him. Stocks dropped. Investors fled. Lawsuits piled up. But he started sleeping at night. He looked in the mirror without feeling sick. He built a relationship based on honesty. He created systems that protected people. He became whole. Hiding doesn't make you safe. It makes you hollow. Fourth, power needs accountability. Kalen had wealth and influence. For a long time, he made decisions in rooms full of people who'd never missed a meal. Not until Kasara and Gary and Linda got voices did things change. Power without accountability is dangerous. It magnifies harm, creates blind spots. If you have power, you need people who will tell you the truth, who will challenge you, who will see what you can't. Fifth, character is what you do when nobody's watching. The moments that defined this story weren't public. They were quiet choices made alone. Kalen buying groceries at midnight. Kasara giving cake mix to a struggling mom. Kalen opens Isolde's file at 2 a.m. and decides to face the truth. Those moments matter more than headlines or applause. So ask yourself, what are you doing when nobody's watching? Are you cutting corners, hiding truths, ignoring struggles because helping would be inconvenient? Or are you choosing kindness, honesty, seeing people and acting? Those quiet choices define who you really are. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, what's one small kindness you can offer this week? What truth do you need to stop running from? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that blend drama with real-life morals. And share this with someone struggling with money, guilt, or hard decisions. Because stories like this, they remind us that change is possible, that integrity matters, that one person's choice to see another person can change everything. Thanks for reading. I'm Mr. Duskmore, and I'll see you in the next story.